Jimin breaks down after uncovering Jungkook's hidden tattoo, a secret that threatens their bond and reveals a painful truth. The first thing Jimin hears is Jungkook whispering, "Don't look," but it's already too late. The fabric of Jungkook's shirt slips from his shoulder, and under the dim amber glow of the studio lights, the ink burns like a confession carved into skin. Jimin's breath catches, not because of the artistry, it's beautiful, intricate, alive, but because of what it means. His fingers tremble mid-air, hovering inches away as if touching it might make the truth irreversible. "Since when?" Jimin's voice cracks, the sound thin and fragile against the hum of the empty practice room. Jungkook pulls away instinctively, the movement too quick, too defensive, like a secret that has learned how to run. "It's nothing," he says, but his eyes betray him. They flicker, restless, searching for an exit that doesn't exist. "Nothing." Jimin almost laughs at that word, but it dissolves into a shaky inhale. Nothing doesn't leave permanent marks. Nothing doesn't hide under layers of clothing, concealed like guilt. Nothing doesn't make his chest feel like it's collapsing inward. He steps closer instead. The air smells faintly of sweat and something metallic, like rain before it hits concrete. Their reflections stare back at them from the mirrored wall, two figures standing too close, yet separated by something invisible and growing. "Turn around," Jimin says, softer this time but firmer. Jungkook hesitates. It's subtle, barely a second, but Jimin notices everything about Jungkook. The way he taps his fingers when he's anxious, the way his jaw tightens when he's cornered, the way silence always stretches longer when he's hiding something. Slowly, Jungkook turns. The tattoo is fully revealed now. It spans across his shoulder blade, dark lines weaving into a design that feels almost alive. A date, a symbol, words that look simple at first glance but carry weight Jimin can feel pressing against his lungs. It's not just ink, it's a memory, a promise, a story Jimin was never told. And that's what breaks him. Tears come before he can stop them, blurring his vision, making the lines of the tattoo swim and distort. He doesn't even realize he's crying until one drop falls onto his hand, warm and accusing. "You said," Jimin struggles to breathe through the tightness in his chest, "you said you didn't keep anything from me." Jungkook's shoulders tense, his back still turned. "I don't," he replies, but the words sound rehearsed hollow. "Then what is this?" Jimin's voice rises, the pain sharpening into something almost unbearable. "What is this, Jungkook?" Silence. It stretches, suffocating. Jimin remembers the nights Jungkook stayed out longer than usual, the unexplained absences, the way his laughter sometimes felt forced, like it was covering something deeper. He remembers brushing it off, trusting him, believing that whatever it wasn't important enough to matter. He was wrong. Jungkook finally turns back, his expression unreadable, but his eyes are stormy, conflicted, carrying something heavy that refuses to surface. "It's not what you think," he says quietly. Jimin shakes his head, a bitter smile breaking through his tears. "Then tell me what to think." But Jungkook doesn't answer. And that silence is louder than any confession. Jimin wipes his face roughly, frustration mixing with hurt. "Do you know how stupid I feel right now?" he says, his voice trembling. "Standing here, realizing there's a part of you I don't know at all." "That's not true," Jungkook steps forward, desperation creeping into his tone. "You know me better than anyone." "Do I?" Jimin counters, his eyes darting back to the tattoo. "Because this says otherwise." The room feels smaller now, the walls closing in, the mirrors reflecting their fractured reality from every angle. Jimin can't escape the image, Jungkook standing there, marked by something that doesn't belong to him, something that feels like a betrayal even if he doesn't fully understand why. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jimin asks, his voice softer now, almost pleading. Jungkook looks away. "And that's the answer." Jimin's chest tightens again, the realization sinking deeper than he wants it to. It's not just about the tattoo, it's about trust, about the quiet spaces between words where truths are supposed to live. "You didn't trust me," Jimin whispers. "I was protecting you," Jungkook replies immediately, the words spilling out like they've been waiting for this moment. "From what?" Jimin demands. Jungkook's gaze snaps back to him, intense, almost desperate. "From this." Jimin laughs then, but it's broken, hollow. "Congratulations," he says, his voice trembling. "You failed." The words hang between them, heavy and irreversible. For a moment, neither of them moves. Then Jimin takes a step back. It's small, barely noticeable, but it feels like a distance that spans miles. I don't even recognize you right now, he admits, his voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook's expression falters, something raw flashing across his face. Jimin. Jimin pauses, swallowing hard as he tries to steady himself. I need to understand why this hurts so much. Because it shouldn't. It's just a tattoo. But it feels like so much more. Jungkook takes another step forward, but Jimin raises his hand, stopping him. Not yet. Not when everything feels like it's unraveling. Tell me the truth, Jimin says, his eyes locking onto Jungkook's. No more hiding. Jungkook exhales slowly, his shoulders dropping as if the weight he's been carrying is finally catching up to him. His fingers brush against the edge of the tattoo, a gesture so subtle yet so revealing. And for the first time, Jimin realizes. This isn't just a secret. It's a scar. And whatever it represents, it's something Jungkook has been running from for a long time. Jimin's tears fall again, but this time they're quieter, heavier with understanding he's not ready to face. Then stop protecting me, Jimin whispers, and let me see the part of you you're so afraid of. The room falls silent once more, but this silence is different. It's not empty. It's waiting. Jungkook's voice breaks the silence first, low and unsteady like a thread pulled too tight. You think I wanted you to find out like this? Jimin lets out a sharp breath, his arms crossing instinctively as if he's trying to hold himself together. Find out, he repeats, his tone laced with disbelief. You mean like I wasn't supposed to know at all? Jungkook runs a hand through his hair, packing once, twice, like he's searching for the right version of the truth to give. But there's no careful version left anymore, not after this. I was going to tell you, he insists, though even he doesn't sound convinced. Jimin's eyes flash, anger finally overtaking the fragile sadness. When, he fires back immediately. After what? After I accidentally see something else, after someone else tells me. His voice rises with each word, cracking under the weight of betrayal. Or were you just going to keep pretending it didn't exist? I wasn't pretending, Jungkook snaps, sharper now, defensive. I was dealing with it. Alone, Jimin says, the word slicing clean through the air. That lands. Jungkook stops moving. For a moment he doesn't say anything, and that hesitation feels louder than any argument. Jimin sees it, the flicker of guilt, the way Jungkook's jaw tightens like he's bracing for impact. Yes, Jungkook admits finally, his voice quieter now. Alone. Jimin shakes his head, stepping back again, his chest rising and falling too fast. That's exactly the problem, he says. You always do this. You shut me out when things get hard, like I'm just, convenient when everything's okay. That's not fair, Jungkook says quickly, frustration building. You know that's not what this is. Then what is it? Jimin demands again, his voice echoing off the mirrored walls. Because I'm standing here looking at something that clearly means everything to you and I know nothing about it. Nothing, Jungkook. The name hits differently this time. Not soft, not familiar, it feels distant. Jungkook exhales, long and heavy, his shoulders dropping as if he's finally giving up the fight to keep it buried. He turns slightly, his fingers brushing against the tattoo again, almost unconsciously. It's not just a tattoo, he says. I figured that out, Jimin replies bitterly. Jungkook ignores the tone, his eyes fixed somewhere else now, somewhere far from this room, far from Jimin. It's a reminder, he continues, of something I can't undo. Jimin's anger falters just slightly. There's something in Jungkook's voice, something raw, unguarded, that makes it harder to stay purely angry. A reminder of what? He asks, quieter now but no less intense. Jungkook swallows, his throat tightening visibly, of a mistake. The word hangs there, heavy and vague. Jimin frowns, what kind of mistake? Jungkook doesn't answer immediately, and Jimin feels that familiar frustration creeping back in. But this time, there's something else mixed with it, fear. Because whatever this is, it's bigger than he thought. You remember last year, Jungkook finally says, his voice barely above a whisper, when I disappeared for a week. Jimin's brows knit together. You said it was for work. I lied. The confession lands like a punch. Jimin's stomach twists, his mind racing back to that time, the unanswered calls, the vague texts, the uneasy feeling he tried so hard to ignore. He trusted him. He didn't push. You just vanished, Jimin says slowly, the memory sharpening. And when you came back, you acted like everything was normal. Jungkook nods, his gaze dropping to the floor, because I wanted it to be. But it wasn't, Jimin says. No, Jungkook admits. Silence settles again, but it's heavier now, filled with something darker. What happened? Jimin presses. Jungkook clenches his fists at his sides, his entire body tense. I got involved in something I shouldn't have, he says carefully. Something dangerous. Jimin's heart skips. Dangerous how? Jungkook looks up at him then, and there's something in his eyes that makes Jimin's breath hitch. People got hurt. The words are simple, but the implication is. Jimin feels a chill run down his spine. What are you saying? I'm saying, Jungkook continues, his voice trembling now, that this, he gestures to the tattoo, isn't just a memory. It's a consequence. Jimin's throat goes dry. Did you hurt someone? Jungkook flinches. And that's enough. Jimin steps back like he's been burned, his head shaking in disbelief. No, he mutters. No, you don't get to just say something like that and then go quiet again. What did you do, Jungkook? I didn't mean for it to happen, Jungkook says quickly, desperation bleeding into his voice. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was in control. But you weren't, Jimin says, his voice sharp. Jungkook closes his eyes briefly. No. Jimin runs a hand over his face, trying to process everything, but it feels like too much, too fast. And this tattoo, he says, gesturing toward it, what does it mean? Jungkook hesitates again, but this time he doesn't stay silent. It's the date, he says, the day everything went wrong. Jimin stares at him, his chest tightening, and the symbol. Jungkook's lips press into a thin line. It's a mark. A mark of what? Jimin asks, his patience hanging by a thread. Jungkook meets his eyes, and for the first time there's no hesitation, just truth. A mark that I owe something I can't escape. Jimin feels the ground shift beneath him. Oh, who? He whispers. Jungkook doesn't answer right away, but the fear in his expression is answer enough. And suddenly, this isn't just about a tattoo anymore. It's about something much bigger, something dangerous. Jimin's heart pounds in his chest, his mind racing with possibilities he doesn't want to consider. Are you in trouble? He asks, his voice barely steady. Jungkook lets out a shaky breath. I thought I could get out of it. But you didn't, Jimin says. No. The room feels suffocating now. Jimin looks at Jungkook like he's seeing him for the first time, not just as someone he loves, but as someone carrying a weight he never shared. Someone who made choices Jimin doesn't fully understand. You should have told me, Jimin says, his voice breaking again. I could have helped you. Jungkook shakes his head immediately. No, that's exactly why I didn't. Why? Jimin demands. Because I didn't want you dragged into this. Jungkook's voice finally rises, emotions spilling over. I didn't want you to look at me like you're looking at me right now. Jimin freezes. Because Jungkook is right. There's fear in his eyes, confusion, hurt. And something else he doesn't want to admit. Jungkook's voice softens again, almost pleading. I was trying to protect you. Jimin swallows hard, his chest aching. And who's protecting you? He asks quietly. That question lingers unanswered. Jungkook doesn't respond. Because maybe no one is. Jimin takes a slow step forward this time, closing the distance he created earlier. His anger hasn't disappeared, but it's shifted, tangled with something deeper, more complicated. You don't get to decide that for me, Jimin says softly. You don't get to decide what I can or can't handle. Jungkook looks at him, something fragile flickering in his eyes. I'm already in this, Jimin continues, his voice steadier now, whether you wanted me to be or not. Jungkook exhales, like the weight of that truth is finally settling in. I don't know how to fix this, Jungkook admits. Jimin nods slowly, then stop trying to fix it alone. For a moment they just stand there, the tension still thick, the fear still present, but something has shifted. Not resolved. Not healed. But exposed. And sometimes that's the most dangerous part of all. Jungkook's phone vibrates before either of them can say anything else, the sharp buzz cutting through the fragile silence like a blade. He freezes. Jimin notices immediately. Don't, Jimin says, his voice low but firm as Jungkook instinctively reaches for it. Don't ignore it this time. Jungkook hesitates, his hand hovering midair, tension rippling through his entire body. The phone keeps vibrating, relentless, like whoever is on the other side refuses to be dismissed. Jungkook, Jimin presses, stepping closer. Answer it. For a split second, Jungkook looks like he might refuse. Like he might shove the phone back into his pocket and pretend none of this is happening. But then he exhales, sharp and defeated, and pulls it out. The screen lights up his face. Jimin catches the shift instantly, the way Jungkook's expression tightens, the way the color drains just slightly from his skin. Who is it? Jimin asks, quieter now but more dangerous. Jungkook doesn't answer. He just stares at the name. The phone stops vibrating. Silence. Then it starts again. Jimin's patience snaps. Who is it, Jungkook? Jungkook finally looks up, his eyes filled with something raw and unfiltered. Fear. It's them. The word sends a chill straight through Jimin. Then answer it, Jimin says immediately. Jungkook swallows hard. You don't understand. Then make me understand, Jimin cuts in, his voice rising again. Because right now all I see is you being scared of something you won't even explain to me. The phone keeps ringing. Jungkook closes his eyes for a second, like he's bracing himself for impact. Then he answers. He doesn't put it on speaker. But Jimin can still hear enough. Yeah, Jungkook says, his voice controlled, too controlled. A pause. Then a voice from the other end, faint but unmistakably cold. You're late. Jimin feels his stomach twist. Jungkook's jaw tightens. I told you I needed more time. You don't get more time. The voice is calm, too calm. Jimin takes another step closer, his eyes locked onto Jungkook's face, trying to read every flicker of emotion. Jungkook turns slightly away, lowering his voice. I said I'd handle it. Another pause. Then, sharper this time, you think this is something you handle on your own. Jimin's heart pounds. Jungkook's grip on the phone tightens. Don't. We gave you a deadline. Jimin's breath catches. Deadline. You don't want to miss it again, the voice continues almost casually. Or we start collecting in other ways. Jimin's blood runs cold. Jungkook's eyes snap toward him for a split second, panic flashing across his face before he turns away again. Leave him out of this, Jungkook says quickly, his voice strained. The other end goes quiet for a moment. Then, too late. The call ends. Jungkook lowers the phone slowly, his hand trembling just enough for Jimin to notice. For a moment, neither of them speaks. Then Jimin lets out a shaky breath. What the hell was that? Jungkook doesn't respond immediately, his gaze fixed somewhere distant, like he's already calculating his next move. Jungkook, Jimin snaps, grabbing his arm. Talk to me. Jungkook flinches slightly at the contact, but he doesn't pull away. It's exactly what it sounded like, he says finally, his voice rough. Jimin shakes his head, frustration and fear colliding. No, don't do that, don't give me vague answers right now. What do they want from you? Jungkook hesitates. That hesitation says everything. What did you get yourself into? Jimin demands. Jungkook pulls his arm free, running both hands through his hair, packing again like he's trying to outrun the truth. I owe them, he says. You said that already, Jimin replies sharply. Owe them what? Jungkook stops. Silence stretches. Then barely audible's money. Jimin blinks. Money. It's not just money, Jungkook corrects quickly, his voice tightening. It started that way, but now. Now what? Jimin presses. Jungkook looks at him, and there's something terrifying in his eyes. Now it's leverage. Jimin's chest tightens. What does that mean? It means they don't just want to be paid back, Jungkook says. They want control. The word hangs heavy. Jimin takes a step back, trying to process it. Control over what? Jungkook doesn't answer right away. And that silence. It's becoming a pattern Jimin hates. Jungkook, he says again, his voice quieter but more intense. Control over what? Jungkook exhales slowly, like he's finally crossing a line he can't uncross. Over me. The room feels like it tilts. Jimin stares at him, his mind racing. You're saying they're blackmailing you? Jungkook doesn't deny it. Jimin's hands curl into fists. With what? Another pause. Another moment where Jungkook looks like he might shut down again. But he doesn't. With what happened that night, he says. Jimin's heart pounds louder. The night you disappeared. Jungkook nods. Jimin swallows hard. You said people got hurt. Jungkook's gaze drops. Yeah. Jimin's voice trembles. How bad? Jungkook doesn't answer. And that terrifies Jimin more than anything. Jungkook, he whispers, stepping closer again, his voice breaking. Tell me. Jungkook finally looks up, his eyes glassy, filled with something that looks dangerously close to regret. Bad enough that they can ruin everything, he says. Jimin feels like the air has been knocked out of his lungs. Ruin everything, he repeats. Jungkook nods once. Jimin shakes his head, trying to make sense of it. Why didn't you go to the police? Jungkook lets out a bitter laugh. Because I'm not innocent in this. That hits harder than anything else. Jimin stares at him, searching his face for any sign that this is some kind of exaggeration. There isn't one. What did you do? Jimin asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook closes his eyes. And for a moment, it feels like the world is holding its breath. I made a deal, Jungkook says. Jimin's stomach drops. With them. Jungkook nods slowly. I thought it was a one-time thing, easy money, no consequences. But there were consequences, Jimin says. Jungkook laughs softly, but there's no humor in it. Yeah, there always are. Jimin runs a hand over his face, trying to ground himself. So what now? He asks. What do they want you to do? Jungkook doesn't respond immediately. And Jimin already knows he's not going to like the answer. They want me to finish what I started, Jungkook says finally. Jimin's heart sinks, which is... Jungkook meets his eyes. And in that moment, Jimin realizes just how deep this goes. They want me to go back. Silence crashes over them. Jimin feels something inside him snap. No, he says immediately. Jungkook doesn't argue. I'm not letting you do that, Jimin continues, his voice firm despite the fear clawing at his chest. Whatever this is, whatever they're trying to drag you into again, you're not going alone. Jungkook shakes his head. You don't get it. No, you don't get it, Jimin interrupts, stepping closer, his eyes blazing now. You don't get to push me away anymore, not after everything you just told me. They threatened you, Jungkook says, his voice rising. Did you not hear that part? I heard it, Jimin fires back, and I'm still here. That's exactly why I need you to stay out of it, Jungkook shouts. The room falls silent again after that, the echo of his voice lingering. Jimin doesn't flinch this time. He just looks at Jungkook, steady and unyielding. You're not doing this alone, he says, quieter now but stronger. Not anymore. Jungkook's expression cracks just for a second. Because part of him wants to believe that. But the rest of him knows better. And that's what scares him the most. Jungkook shakes his head slowly, but there's no conviction left in the movement, only exhaustion bleeding through every line of his face. You don't understand what you're stepping into, he says, his voice quieter now, but heavier, like every word is dragging something behind it. Jimin doesn't back away this time. If anything, he moves closer, close enough to feel the uneven rhythm of Jungkook's breathing. Then make me understand, he replies, his tone steady despite the storm inside him. Because right now, all I see is you about to walk into something that could destroy you, and you expect me to just stand here and watch. I expect you to stay safe, Jungkook snaps, but the sharpness cracks halfway through, turning into something raw. Why is that so hard for you? Because you're not safe, Jimin fires back instantly. How am I supposed to be okay knowing that? Jungkook looks away, jaw tightening, like he's losing control over something he's been barely holding together. I've handled worse, he mutters. Jimin lets out a disbelieving laugh. Really, because from where I'm standing it looks like you're drowning. That lands harder than anything else. Jungkook goes still. For a second his mask slips completely and Jimin sees it, the fear, the guilt, the suffocating weight he's been carrying alone. It flickers across his face before he tries to bury it again, but it's too late. Jimin steps even closer, his voice softer now but more dangerous in its honesty. "You're scared," he says. Jungkook exhales sharply. "Of course I'm scared." "Then stop pretending you're not," Jimin presses. "Stop acting like you can control something that's clearly controlling you." Jungkook's eyes flash. "I'm trying to fix it." "No," Jimin shakes his head. "You're trying to survive it, there's a difference." Silence settles between them again, but it's tighter now, more fragile. Jungkook rubs the back of his neck, his fingers brushing the edge of the tattoo like it's grounding him, or maybe reminding him of the consequences waiting if he fails. "They said I missed the deadline," Jungkook says suddenly. Jimin's stomach twists. "So what happens now?" Jungkook hesitates, and that hesitation is answer enough. "They escalate," he admits. Jimin feels a cold wave wash over him. "Escalate how?" Jungkook doesn't meet his eyes. They stop asking nicely. Jimin clenches his fists. They weren't asking nicely to begin with. Jungkook lets out a hollow breath. "You haven't seen them when they're not." Jimin studies him carefully. "You have." Jungkook doesn't deny it. That silence says everything. Jimin's chest tightens again, but this time it's not just fear, it's anger, sharp and protective. "Then why would you even consider going back to them?" he demands. "Why would you put yourself in that position again?" "Because I don't have a choice," Jungkook finally snaps, the frustration exploding out of him. "You think I want this? You think I want to go back there and let them dictate everything I do?" "Then don't," Jimin counters immediately. Jungkook lets out a bitter laugh. "That's not how it works." "Then make it work," Jimin insists, his voice rising again. "Fight back, run, do something other than just." He gestures helplessly, walking straight into their hands. Jungkook's expression hardens. Running doesn't make it go away. "Neither does giving in," Jimin shoots back. The tension spikes, sharp and electric. For a moment, it feels like they're standing on opposite sides of something neither of them knows how to cross. Jungkook's voice drops, quieter but more intense. "You don't understand the kind of people they are." "Then tell me," Jimin says again, his patience thinning. "Stop saying that and actually explain it." Jungkook hesitates, then exhales slowly, like he's finally giving in. "They don't just deal in money," he says. "They deal in leverage, information, secrets. If they have something on you, they own you." Jimin's heart pounds. "And they have something on you?" Jungkook nods once. "What exactly?" Jimin presses. Jungkook looks at him, and this time there's no hesitation left. "They have proof of what happened that night," he says. Jimin swallows hard. "Proof of you hurting someone." Jungkook's gaze flickers. "Not just hurting someone." The words hit like a punch. Jimin's breath catches. "What does that mean?" Jungkook doesn't answer immediately, but his silence feels heavier than anything he could say. "Jungkook," Jimin whispers, fear creeping into his voice. "What did you do?" Jungkook closes his eyes for a moment, his entire body tensing like he's bracing for impact. "I didn't know it would go that far," he says, his voice barely steady. "It wasn't supposed to." "That's not an answer," Jimin says, his voice shaking now. Jungkook opens his eyes again. "And there's something broken in them. Someone didn't walk away from it," he says. The room feels like it collapses inward. Jimin stares at him, his mind refusing to fully process what that means but his body reacting anyway, his chest tightening, his pulse racing, his thoughts spiraling. "You're saying," Jimin's voice falters, "you're saying someone." "I don't know what happened after," Jungkook cuts in quickly, almost desperately. "I left before anything else, but they're saying it's on me, that I started it, that if it comes out," his voice trails off. Jimin's hands tremble slightly at his sides. "This is insane," he mutters, more to himself than to Jungkook. "This is insane." "I know," Jungkook says quietly. Jimin looks up at him, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and disbelief. "And you've been carrying this alone?" Jungkook doesn't answer. Jimin exhales sharply, running both hands through his hair. No wonder you've been acting different, he says. No wonder you've been pulling away. I wasn't pulling away, Jungkook says immediately. I was trying to keep you out of it. And how's that working? Jimin asks, his voice cracking. Jungkook doesn't respond. Because there's no good answer. Jimin takes a shaky step back, trying to create space to think, but everything feels too close, too overwhelming. They said they'd come after me, he says slowly, his voice quieter now. Jungkook's head snaps up. They won't. You don't know that, Jimin counters. You literally just told me they use leverage. Jungkook's jaw tightens. I won't let them touch you. Jimin lets out a bitter laugh. You think you have that kind of control? I'll make sure of it, Jungkook insists. And how exactly are you planning to do that? Jimin asks. By going back to them, by doing whatever they tell you to do. Jungkook doesn't answer, but the silence is enough. Jimin shakes his head, anger bubbling up again. That's not protection, Jungkook, that's sacrifice. I don't care what you call it, Jungkook snaps, if it keeps you safe. I don't want that kind of safety, Jimin cuts in, his voice breaking, not if it means losing you in the process. The words hang heavy in the air. Jungkook freezes. Jimin's chest rises and falls rapidly, his emotions spilling over now, raw and unfiltered. Do you even hear yourself? He continues. You're talking about walking into something that could destroy you, and you expect me to just accept that because it keeps me out of it. Jungkook's voice softens, almost pleading. I don't expect you to accept it. Then what do you expect? Jimin asks, his eyes glistening. Jungkook hesitates. And for once, he doesn't have an answer. Jimin exhales shakily, the weight of everything pressing down on him. We need another option, he says, quieter now but firm. There isn't one, Jungkook replies immediately. There has to be, Jimin insists. We just haven't found it yet. Jungkook shakes his head. You don't get it, these people don't just let you walk away. Then we don't walk away, Jimin says, we outplay them. Jungkook blinks, caught off guard. Outplay them. Jimin nods slowly, his mind already racing. If they're using leverage, then we find leverage too. Jungkook stares at him like he's lost his mind. You think it's that simple? No, Jimin admits. I think it's dangerous, I think it could go horribly wrong. He steps closer again, his voice steady despite the fear. But I also think it's better than you handing yourself over to them. Jungkook searches his face, looking for doubt, hesitation. Anything that would make this easier to dismiss. There isn't any. You're serious, Jungkook says. Jimin nods. I'm already involved, might as well do something about it. Jungkook lets out a slow breath, conflicted. This isn't a game, he says. I know, Jimin replies. That's why we can't afford to lose. The room falls quiet again, but this time it's different. Not suffocating. Not empty. But charged with something new. A shift. Jungkook looks at Jimin like he's seeing him in a different light. Stronger, braver, maybe even a little reckless. Even if we try, Jungkook says slowly, we're going in blind. Jimin tilts his head slightly, not completely. Jungkook frowns. What do you mean? Jimin's eyes flicker toward the phone still in Jungkook's hand. They called you, he says, which means they're expecting you. Jungkook's grip tightens around the device. Yeah. Jimin meets his eyes again, something determined settling into his expression. Then we use that. Jungkook's pulse quickens. Use it how, he asks. Jimin takes a slow breath. We go to them, he says. Jungkook's eyes widen slightly. That's exactly what I was trying to avoid. Not on their terms, Jimin counters, on ours. Jungkook stares at him, caught between fear and something dangerously close to hope. And if it goes wrong, Jungkook asks quietly. Jimin holds his gaze. It will, he says honestly. A beat passes. Then softer. But at least we won't be running anymore. Jungkook exhales, long and unsteady, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Because for the first time, there's a different path in front of him. Not safe. Not certain. But not alone. And maybe. That changes everything. Jungkook stares at Jimin like the ground beneath them has just shifted into something unrecognizable, something dangerous and irreversible. You're asking me to walk back into their hands, he says slowly, his voice tight with disbelief. After everything I just told you. I'm asking you to stop being their prey, Jimin replies without hesitation, his tone steady but burning underneath. There's a difference. Jungkook scoffs, shaking his head as he turns away, dragging both hands down his face. You think this is some kind of strategy game, he mutters. You think we can just show up, bluff our way through and somehow come out on top. Jimin steps forward again, refusing to let him retreat into distance. I think doing nothing guarantees you lose, he says. At least this way we have a chance. A chance at what? Jungkook snaps, spinning back around. Getting ourselves killed, exposed. You heard what they said, Jimin, they're already watching. Jimin doesn't flinch. Good, he says. Jungkook freezes. Good. Yeah, Jimin continues, his voice lowering, more dangerous now. Because if they're watching, then they're expecting you to act scared, to follow their script, to show up desperate, alone, ready to do whatever they say. Jungkook's eyes narrow slightly, and we don't give them that, Jimin says. We show up differently. Jungkook lets out a humorless laugh. You think that changes anything? It might, Jimin says, or it might make things worse. But at least it puts us in motion instead of just reacting to whatever they decide. Jungkook looks at him, searching, trying to find the flaw in his logic, but all he sees is determination. Unshakable, reckless determination. You're serious about this, Jungkook says quietly. I am, Jimin replies. A heavy silence settles between them, thick with everything unspoken. Jungkook's gaze drifts again to the mirror, catching their reflections, two figures standing too close to a line neither of them fully understands. They won't just talk, Jungkook says after a moment. If they think I'm stepping out of line, they'll make an example out of me. Jimin swallows, but he doesn't back down. Then we make sure they don't get that chance. Jungkook shakes his head. You don't know how fast things can turn with them. One wrong move. Then we don't make a wrong move, Jimin cuts in. Jungkook's jaw tightens. That's not how reality works. Jimin steps even closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, but it carries more weight than anything he's said so far. Then teach me. Jungkook blinks, caught off guard. What? Teach me how they think, Jimin says. Teach me what to look for, what to avoid. If I'm going into this with you, I'm not going in blind. Jungkook stares at him, something conflicted twisting in his expression. I never wanted you in this, he admits. I know, Jimin says softly, but I'm here now. The words settle deep. Jungkook exhales slowly, like he's finally accepting something he can't undo. They don't like unpredictability, he says after a moment. They like control, structure. If something feels off, they push harder. Jimin nods, absorbing every word. So we give them just enough control to feel comfortable, he says, but not enough to actually trap us. Jungkook watches him carefully. You're thinking ahead. I have to, Jimin replies, because you've been thinking alone for too long. That hits harder than it should. Jungkook looks away again, but this time it's not to avoid, it's to process. His mind is already shifting, recalibrating. The survival instincts he's relied on now colliding with Jimin's approach. They'll expect me to come alone, Jungkook says slowly. Then you go alone, Jimin replies. Jungkook's head snaps back toward him. What? You go in first, Jimin clarifies. Exactly how they expect, no sudden moves, no visible changes. And you, Jungkook asks, suspicion creeping in. Jimin's lips press into a thin line. I won't be far. Jungkook immediately shakes his head. No, absolutely not if they see you. They won't, Jimin cuts in. I'm not stupid. This isn't about being stupid, Jungkook snaps. This is about risk. You being anywhere near that place is a risk. And you being there alone is, Jimin shoots back. Jungkook opens his mouth but no words come out. Because he knows Jimin is right. That's exactly my point, Jimin continues, his voice softening just slightly. You've been carrying all of this by yourself and look where it got you. Jungkook exhales sharply, frustration still there but now tangled with something else, something closer to fear for Jimin than for himself. If something happens to you, Jungkook starts. It won't, Jimin interrupts. You can't promise that, Jungkook says. Neither can you, Jimin replies. The tension spikes again, sharp and suffocating. For a moment, it feels like they're stuck in a loop, neither willing to back down, both driven by something stronger than logic. Jungkook runs a hand through his hair, packing again, his thoughts spiraling. You don't understand what they're capable of, he mutters. Then show me, Jimin says quietly. Jungkook stops. Slowly he turns back toward him, his expression unreadable. You really want to see that side of this, he asks. Jimin doesn't hesitate. If it means understanding what you've been going through, yes. There's a long pause. Then Jungkook nods once almost reluctantly. All right, he says, but you listen to me, no improvising, no acting on impulse. Jimin almost smiles, but it doesn't quite reach his eyes. You're asking a lot. I'm serious, Jungkook says firmly. If something feels wrong, you leave immediately. And you, Jimin asks. Jungkook hesitates. I'll handle it. Jimin's expression hardens. No, that's not how this works anymore. Jungkook exhales, tension building again. Jimin. We leave together, Jimin says, cutting him off. No exceptions. Jungkook stares at him, caught between arguing and agreeing. Fine, he says finally, though it sounds like the word costs him something. Together. Jimin nods, a quiet sense of resolve settling in. Good, he says. Another silence follows, but this one is different, focused, intentional. Jungkook glances at his phone again, his grip tightening slightly. They'll call again, he says. Then we're ready, Jimin replies. Jungkook studies him for a moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. You trust me? He asks suddenly. The question catches Jimin off guard. But only for a second. I do, Jimin says, that's why this hurts so much. Jungkook's chest tightens at that. And you, Jimin asks softly, do you trust me? Jungkook doesn't answer right away. Because trust right now feels complicated. But then he looks at Jimin, really looks at him, and something shifts. I want to, he says honestly. Jimin nods, accepting that for what it is. That's enough for now, he says. Jungkook exhales slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing just a fraction. Then we do this together, he says. Jimin nods again, together. But just as the word settles between them, Jungkook's phone vibrates again. This time the sound feels louder. He looks down at the screen, his expression darkening immediately. They're calling, he says. Jimin's pulse quickens, but his voice stays steady. Answer it. Jungkook hesitates for only a second this time before pressing accept. Yeah, he says, his tone controlled. A pause. Then the same cold voice echoes faintly from the other end. You took your time. I said I needed it, Jungkook replies. And I said you don't get that luxury. Jungkook's jaw tightens, but he doesn't rise to it. What do you want? A soft chuckle comes through the line, sending a chill down both their spines. We're done waiting, the voice says. You come tonight. Jungkook's grip tightens around the phone. Where? There's a brief pause, like the person on the other end is savoring the moment. Same place, they say, midnight. Jungkook's heart pounds, but his voice stays steady. And if I do? Another pause. Longer this time. Then we stop being patient. The line goes dead. Jungkook lowers the phone slowly, the weight of those words settling heavily in the room. Jimin exhales quietly. Midnight, he says. Jungkook nods. Silence stretches between them, but it's no longer filled with uncertainty. It's filled with something sharper. Something inevitable. Jimin looks at Jungkook, his eyes steady despite the fear simmering underneath. Then we don't have much time. Jungkook meets his gaze, something fierce flickering behind the fear. No, he says, we don't. The clock is already ticking. And whatever waits for them at midnight. It's not going to be forgiving. The rain starts just as they step outside, sudden and heavy, drenching the city in a cold, relentless rhythm that feels too fitting for what's about to happen. Jimin doesn't say anything at first. He just walks beside Jungkook, close enough to feel the tension radiating off him but not touching. The silence between them isn't empty, It's loaded, stretched tight with everything they're not saying. Jungkook finally breaks it. You can still walk away. Jimin lets out a quiet breath, almost like a laugh, but there's no humor in it. You're still doing that, he says. Doing what? Trying to push me out before things get worse. Jungkook stops walking. Jimin takes another step before realizing, then turns back, rain already soaking through his clothes, dripping from his hair. I mean it, Jungkook says, his voice low, almost lost under the sound of the rain. Once we go there, there's no pretending you're not involved anymore. Jimin steps closer again, water splashing under his shoes. I told you already, he says, I'm not pretending. Jungkook searches his face like he's hopping, just for a second, that Jimin will change his mind. He doesn't. You don't even know where we're going, Jungkook says. Then tell me. Jungkook hesitates, then exhales. It's an old warehouse, he says, near the docks. They use it for meetings. Meetings, Jimin repeats, the word heavy with implication. Jungkook nods. It's isolated, no cameras nearby, no witnesses. Jimin's stomach tightens, but he keeps his expression steady. Convenient. Jungkook lets out a humorless breath. For them. They start walking again, slower this time. Have you been there before? Jimin asks. Jungkook's silence answers before his words do. Yeah, he says. And the last time, Jimin presses. Jungkook's jaw tightens. That's where it happened. Jimin feels the weight of that settle deep in his chest. That night, he says quietly. Jungkook nods once. The rain gets heavier, drumming against the pavement, against their shoulders, against everything. Jimin glances at him. Why go back there, he asks. If it's tied to something that bad, why not make them meet somewhere else? Jungkook shakes his head, because they're not asking, they're telling. Jimin exhales slowly. Then we change the situation when we get there. Jungkook glances at him. You keep saying that like it's simple. I didn't say it was simple, Jimin replies. I said it's necessary. Jungkook looks away again, but there's less resistance now, more reluctant acceptance. They walk in silence for a while after that, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, everything blurred and distorted by the rain. Jimin's mind races, piecing together fragments of what Jungkook has told him, trying to form something that resembles a plan. But every path leads to risk. Every option feels like a gamble. Jungkook, he says after a moment. Yeah. If things go wrong, Jimin hesitates. Jungkook glances at him. They will. Jimin ignores that. If they do, you don't get to play the hero. Jungkook frowns. What does that mean? It means you don't sacrifice yourself thinking it's the only way out, Jimin says firmly. We find another way together. Jungkook looks at him, something complicated flickering in his eyes. You're asking me to trust that there is another way. I'm asking you to trust me, Jimin replies. That hits differently. Jungkook doesn't respond right away. Because trust isn't just a word anymore, it's a risk. They reach the edge of the docks faster than Jimin expected. The air changes here heavier, carrying the scent of salt and rust. The sound of the rain mixes with the distant creak of metal, and the low hum of water hitting the shore. Jungkook slows down. We're close, he says. Jimin's pulse quickens, but his expression stays controlled. Good. Jungkook stops again, turning to face him fully this time. Rain runs down his face, but he doesn't wipe it away. This is your last chance, he says. Once we walk in there, I can't guarantee anything. Jimin steps closer, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his chest. You already said that. And I meant it. I know. Jungkook searches his face one last time, like he's memorizing it, like he's trying to prepare for something he doesn't want to happen. Jimin notices. Don't look at me like that, he says softly. Like what? Like you're about to lose me. Jungkook's expression tightens. I'm trying not to. Jimin exhales, then reaches out, grabbing Jungkook's wrist before he can overthink it. The contact is brief but grounding. You're not losing me tonight, Jimin says. Jungkook looks down at their hands, then back up at him. You don't know that, he says quietly. Jimin's grip tightens slightly before he lets go. Then let's make sure it doesn't happen. A beat passes. Then Jungkook nods. Stay behind me when we go in, he says. Jimin raises an eyebrow. We're not starting that again. I'm serious, Jungkook insists. If something happens. We handle it together, Jimin interrupts. Jungkook exhales sharply. You're impossible. Jimin almost smiles. You're just realizing that now. For a second, something lighter flickers between them. Then it's gone. Because they've reached it. The warehouse looms ahead, dark and silent, its outline barely visible through the rain. One dim light flickers near the entrance, casting long, distorted shadows across the wet ground. Jimin's chest tightens. This is it, Jungkook says. Jimin nods slowly, his gaze fixed on the building. Yeah, he says. They stand there for a moment, neither moving. Then Jungkook steps forward. Jimin follows. Each step feels heavier than the last, the sound of their footsteps swallowed by the rain. As they get closer, Jimin notices the details. The rusted metal doors, the broken windows, the faint sound of something shifting inside. Not empty. Never empty. Jungkook reaches the door first, his hand hovering over it for a second before pushing it open. The creak is loud, echoing into the darkness. Inside, the air is colder, thicker, filled with the scent of damp wood and something else, something metallic. Jimin steps in right behind him. The door shuts behind them with a heavy thud. And suddenly, the rain feels very far away. For a moment, it's completely silent. Then, a slow clap echoes from the shadows. Well, a voice says, smooth and amused, look who finally decided to show up. Jungkook's body tenses instantly. Jimin's eyes adjust to the dim light, scanning the space until he spots them. 3 figures are waiting, watching. One of them steps forward, the faint light catching just enough of his face to reveal a smirk. You kept us waiting, he says. Jungkook's voice is steady but tight. I'm here now. The man's gaze shifts, landing on Jimin. And his smile widens. That, he says slowly, wasn't part of the deal. Jimin feels Jungkook shift slightly beside him, tension coiling. He's not involved, Jungkook says quickly. The man tilts his head, studying Jimin like he's something interesting. Really, he murmurs. Jimin meets his gaze, refusing to look away. Really, Jungkook repeats. The man chuckles softly. I don't think you get to decide that anymore. The words settle into the room like a threat. Jimin steps forward before Jungkook can stop him. Then let's make this simple, he says, his voice cutting clean through the tension. Jungkook stiffens beside him, Jimin. But Jimin doesn't stop. You called him here, Jimin continues, his eyes locked on the man. So talk. The room goes quiet again. The man watches him for a long moment, something calculating in his expression. Then he smiles. Bold, he says, I like that. Jungkook's pulse spikes. Because bold. Bold is dangerous here. The man takes another step closer, the other 2 figures shifting slightly behind him. But bold doesn't mean smart, he adds. Jimin doesn't react. Maybe not, he says, but it gets things moving. The man's smile sharpens. Oh, things are definitely about to move, he says. Jungkook feels it then. The shift. The moment everything tips just slightly out of balance. And something deep in his gut tells him. They've just stepped into something far worse than either of them expected. The man's smile lingers a second too long, like he's savoring the tension in the room, feeding off it. You walk in here with confidence, he says, voice low and smooth, like you have something to bargain with. Jimin doesn't look away. Maybe I do. Jungkook's head snaps toward him, a flash of alarm cutting through his composure. Jimin. But Jimin doesn't break eye contact with the man, not even for a second. The man's gaze sharpens, interest flickering behind it. That's a dangerous statement, he says. Only if it's empty, Jimin replies. The air shifts. Jungkook feels it instantly. The atmosphere tightens like a wire being pulled to its limit. He takes a subtle step closer to Jimin, his voice low and urgent. "Stop," he mutters. "You don't know what you're doing." Jimin finally glances at him just for a fraction of a second. "Trust me." Jungkook almost laughs at that, almost. But the sound dies in his throat because this isn't the time, and trust feels like the most fragile thing in the room. The man claps once, slow, deliberate. "I'm curious now," he says, "go on." Jimin shifts his weight slightly, controlled, deliberate. "You want something from him," he says, nodding toward Jungkook. "Otherwise, this would already be over." The man tilts his head, amused. "You're assuming a lot." "I'm observing," Jimin corrects. A faint smirk returns to the man's lips. "All right, observe this, he owes us, that's the only thing that matters." Jimin nods slowly. "Money or something more complicated?" Jungkook's chest tightens. The man's eyes narrow just slightly. "You've been talking." "I've been listening," Jimin replies. Silence stretches again. The man studies him like a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit, like something unexpected that might be worth keeping around, or eliminating. "And what exactly do you think you're offering here?" the man asks. Jimin takes a slow breath. "An alternative," he says. Jungkook feels his pulse spike. No, this isn't the plan." "What kind of alternative?" the man asks, voice quieter now, more dangerous. Jimin doesn't hesitate. "You don't need him under your control if you get what you actually want." The man's expression darkens slightly. "And what do we actually want?" Jimin's eyes don't waver. "Leverage." A flicker. Barely there. But Jungkook sees it. And that's when he realizes Jimin isn't bluffing blindly. He's reading them. The man lets out a soft laugh. "You're not wrong," he admits. "So what's your point?" "My point," Jimin continues, "is that controlling him is inefficient." Jungkook's breath catches. "Jimin." "Let him talk," the man interrupts, raising a hand slightly. Jungkook goes still. Jimin nods once, then continues, his voice steady. "You said it yourself, you deal in leverage. That means you care about outcomes, not just control for the sake of it." The man watches him closely now, the amusement fading into something sharper. "Go on," he says. Jimin takes a step forward. Jungkook's instinct is to grab him, pull him back, stop this before it goes too far. But he doesn't. Because something about this, something about the way Jimin is holding himself, makes him hesitate. "You're using him because you think he's useful," Jimin says, "but if he's forced, if he's desperate, he becomes unpredictable. A liability." The man's eyes flick briefly toward Jungkook, then back to Jimin. "And you think you're not?" he asks. Jimin's lips press into a thin line. "I think I'm offering you a better version of what you already have." Jungkook feels the ground shift under his feet. "What are you doing?" he whispers, panic threading through his voice. Jimin doesn't answer him. The man smiles again, slower this time. "Now I'm really interested," he says. "Explain." Jimin's chest rises and falls steadily. "You want results," he says. "Not excuses, not mistakes, not someone who's trying to fix something they regret." Jungkook flinches. "And you think he can't give us that?" the man asks. "I think he's compromised," Jimin replies. That word lands like a blade. Jungkook's head snaps toward him, hurt flashing across his face. Compromised. Jimin doesn't look at him. "I think he's too emotionally involved to be reliable," Jimin continues. The room goes very still. Jungkook feels something crack inside his chest. "You don't get to say that," he says, his voice low, shaking with anger. Jimin finally turns to him. And for a moment, something passes between them, something complicated, painful, necessary. "I'm trying to save you," Jimin says quietly. "That's not how it feels," Jungkook snaps. The man watches the exchange with clear amusement now. "Interesting," he murmurs. Jimin turns back to him, his expression hardening again. "You want efficiency," he says, "then you let him go." Jungkook's breath catches. The man raises an eyebrow. "And why would we do that?" "Because you take me instead," Jimin says. The words hit the room like an explosion. "No." Jungkook's voice is immediate, sharp, filled with pure panic. He grabs Jimin's arm, pulling him back slightly. No, absolutely not, that's not happening. Jimin doesn't resist, but he doesn't back down either. It's the better deal, he says, still looking at the man. Jungkook's grip tightens. Stop talking like you're replaceable, he snaps. You're not a bargaining chip. And neither are you, Jimin shoots back. Yes, I am, Jungkook says, his voice breaking slightly. That's the whole problem. Silence crashes over them. The man chuckles softly. You two are fascinating, he says. Jungkook ignores him, his focus locked entirely on Jimin. You don't get to make that decision for me, he says, his voice low and intense. And you don't get to sacrifice yourself without a fight, Jimin replies. I'm not sacrificing myself, I'm fixing my mistake, Jungkook snaps. And I'm trying to stop it from destroying you, Jimin fires back. Their voices echo through the warehouse, raw and unfiltered, everything laid bare in front of people who should never have seen it. The man raises a hand again, almost lazily. As much as I'm enjoying this, he says, I'd like to steer us back to the part where you offer me something useful. Jimin turns back to him, his expression unreadable now. You said you wanted control, Jimin says. I'm giving you something better. The man tilts his head, and that is choice, Jimin replies. A pause. The man's smile fades slightly. Explain. You let him go, Jimin says. Clean slate, no more leverage over him. In return, you get someone who walks in willingly, no hesitation, no resistance. Jungkook's chest feels like it's caving in. Stop, he says again, his voice barely holding together. Just stop. But Jimin doesn't. Someone who understands what you want, he continues. Someone who won't make the same mistakes. The man studies him, something darker creeping into his gaze. And why, he asks slowly, would you do that? Jimin doesn't hesitate. Because I can handle it. Jungkook's grip on his arm loosens slightly, not because he agrees, but because the words hit somewhere deeper than anger. The man takes a step closer, now standing just a few feet away. And you think he can't? He asks, nodding toward Jungkook. Jimin's voice softens just slightly. I think he shouldn't have to. The silence that follows is suffocating. Jungkook looks at Jimin like he doesn't recognize him anymore, like he's seeing a version of him he never expected. You don't get to decide that for me, Jungkook says again, quieter now but no less intense. Jimin finally turns fully toward him. And you don't get to carry everything alone, he replies. For a moment, it feels like the rest of the world disappears. Just the two of them. The argument. The fear. The unspoken truth sitting between them. The man exhales, almost bored now. Enough, he says. They both go still. I've heard your offer, he continues, and I'll admit it's tempting. Jungkook's stomach drops. But the man adds, his tone sharpening, you're missing one very important detail. Jimin's eyes narrow slightly, which is? The man smiles again. You don't get to choose who we keep. The words hit hard. Jungkook feels it immediately, the shift, the danger snapping back into place. And what does that mean? Jimin asks, his voice steady despite the tension. The man's gaze flicks between them. Then he says almost casually, it means we might just take both of you. Silence. Heavy. Terrifying. Jungkook's grip tightens again, pulling Jimin slightly closer without even realizing it. Jimin doesn't move away. Because suddenly, this isn't a negotiation anymore. It's a trap. For a split second, everything stops. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that presses against the lungs, suffocating, waiting for something to snap. Jungkook's grip on Jimin's arm tightens, instinctive, protective, almost desperate. No, he says immediately, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the tension. That's not happening. The man tilts his head, amused again, as if resistance is just another form of entertainment. You're not in a position to decide that. Jungkook steps forward, placing himself slightly in front of Jimin without even thinking about it. Then let me make it clear, he says, his voice colder now, steadier, like he's locking something into place. You don't touch him. Jimin exhales sharply behind him. Jungkook. Not now, Jungkook mutters under his breath, barely loud enough for Jimin to hear. Just don't. The man watches them closely, his smile fading into something more calculating. You're getting bold, he says. That usually doesn't end well. Jungkook doesn't respond to that. His focus is sharp now, narrowed, every nerve in his body screaming that this is the moment things go wrong. Jimin steps to the side, refusing to stay hidden behind him. You said you wanted efficiency, he says, his voice steady again, though his pulse is hammering. Taking both of us isn't efficient, it's messy. The man's eyes flick toward him, interest rekindling. Messy can be useful. Not when it draws attention, Jimin counters. Two people disappearing instead of one, that's a pattern. Jungkook glances at him, surprised despite everything. The man hums softly, considering that. You're smarter than I expected, he admits. I have to be, Jimin replies. Still doesn't change the fact that you're both standing in front of me, the man says. Which makes you both options. Jungkook's patience snaps. Enough, he says, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. You want something, then stop playing games and say it. The man's expression hardens slightly, careful. Jungkook doesn't back down. No, you've been pulling strings, making threats, acting like you already own everything in this room. He takes another step forward, closing the distance just enough to make the tension spike. But you don't. Jimin's breath catches. This is new. This isn't the Jungkook who was cornered. This is someone pushing back. The man studies him, the amusement gone now, replaced with something colder. You're forgetting your place. Jungkook lets out a quiet laugh, but there's nothing light about it. No, he says, I remember it perfectly. That's why I'm done standing in it. The two figures behind the man shift slightly, subtle but threatening. Jimin notices. Jungkook notices. Everything is one wrong move away from exploding. You think you can just walk away? The man asks, his voice dropping. I think you need me more than you're admitting, Jungkook replies. Jimin's heart skips. That's dangerous. The man's eyes narrow. Explain. Jungkook doesn't hesitate this time. If I was just disposable, I wouldn't be here. You would have already handled it. Silence. Heavy. Calculated. The man doesn't respond immediately, and that hesitation, small as it is, feels like a crack in the foundation. Jungkook presses on. You said it yourself, he continues. You deal in leverage, that means you keep what's useful. The man's gaze sharpens. And right now, Jungkook adds, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him, I'm still useful. Jimin watches him, something shifting in his chest. Fear, admiration, something deeper he doesn't have time to name. The man exhales slowly, then smiles again, but it's different now. Tighter, less amused. You're walking a very thin line, he says. Jungkook nods, so are you. That lands. The tension spikes even higher, the air practically crackling with it. Jimin steps forward again, his voice cutting in before things spiral further. You want leverage, he says, then you don't burn it. The man glances at him. Jimin holds his gaze. Taking both of us reduces your options, he says. It turns a controlled situation into chaos, and from what I can tell, he tilts his head slightly. You don't like chaos. A pause. Longer this time. The man studies him again, more carefully now, like he's reassessing everything. You're either very brave, he says slowly, or very reckless. Maybe both, Jimin replies. Jungkook almost exhales a laugh, but it gets stuck in his chest. Because this is working. Or at least it's shifting something. The man finally steps back slightly, creating just a fraction more space. Fine, he says, let's say I humor you. Jungkook doesn't relax. Jimin doesn't either. What exactly are you proposing? The man asks. Jimin glances briefly at Jungkook, then back at the man. You let him settle his debt, he says, on terms that don't involve dragging this further. The man raises an eyebrow, and why would I agree to that? Because escalation increases risk, Jimin replies, and risk cuts both ways. The man's smile flickers. You're implying something. I'm stating a fact, Jimin says. Jungkook watches him closely now, realizing what he's doing. He's not just negotiating. He's threatening, carefully, subtly, but unmistakably. The man's expression darkens just slightly. You think you have something on us? Jimin doesn't answer immediately. And that silence. It's intentional. It stretches just long enough to plant doubt. Jungkook feels it, the shift in the room, the way the balance tilts just slightly in their favor. Interesting, the man murmurs. Jimin finally speaks again. I think you're smart enough to consider all possibilities. Another pause. Then the man lets out a quiet laugh. You're good, he admits, I'll give you that. Jimin doesn't react. But here's the problem, the man continues. You're still in my territory, still within my control. Jungkook's body tenses again. And control, the man adds, is something I don't give up easily. Jimin nods slowly. I wouldn't expect you to. The man's gaze sharpens. Then what exactly are you expecting? Jimin takes a breath. An agreement, he says. Jungkook's pulse spikes again. The man tilts his head. On what terms? Jimin doesn't hesitate this time. You give him one chance to finish this, he says. Clean, no extra conditions, no added pressure. And in return, the man asks. Jimin's eyes flicker just for a second. Then steady again. In return, he says, you get results. The man studies him. Long, carefully. Then his gaze shifts to Jungkook. And you, he asks, you agree to this? Jungkook feels every nerve in his body screaming at once. This is it. The moment that decides everything. He looks at Jimin. Really looks at him. At the determination. At the fear he's trying to hide. At the way he's standing here, risking everything without hesitation. Jungkook exhales slowly. Then nods. I agree, he says. The words feel heavy but certain. The man watches him for a moment, then smiles again, slow and deliberate. All right, he says, one chance. Jimin's chest tightens. Jungkook's pulse pounds. But the man adds, his tone sharpening again, if you fail. The air goes still. We don't negotiate again. Jungkook nods once, understood. The man's gaze flicks between them one last time. Then we're done here, he says. The tension doesn't disappear, but it shifts, loosens just enough to breathe again. Jungkook grabs Jimin's wrist without thinking. Let's go, he mutters. Jimin doesn't argue this time. They turn. Step toward the door. Every second feels like it stretches too long, like something could still go wrong at any moment. The door creaks open. The sound of rain crashes back in, loud and overwhelming. They step outside. The cold air hits their faces, grounding real. Jungkook doesn't stop walking until they're far enough away that the warehouse disappears behind them. Only then does he let go. Silence settles between them again, but it's different now. Not just tension. Something heavier. Jimin finally speaks first. That worked. Jungkook lets out a sharp breath, running a hand through his soaked hair. You call that working? We're still alive, Jimin says. That counts. Jungkook shakes his head, a mix of disbelief and something else crossing his face. Do you have any idea how close that was to going completely wrong? Jimin meets his eyes. Yeah, he says quietly, I do. Jungkook stares at him for a moment, then laughs softly, shaking his head again. You're insane. Maybe, Jimin admits. A pause. Then Jungkook's expression shifts, something more serious settling in. You shouldn't have offered yourself like that, he says. Jimin's gaze doesn't waver, and you shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. Jungkook exhales, frustration flickering again. That's not the point. It is to me, Jimin replies. The rain continues to fall around them, but neither of them moves. You don't get to decide my worth like that, Jungkook says, his voice quieter now but intense. And you don't get to decide that you're the only one allowed to take risks, Jimin counters. Their eyes lock. Everything unspoken rises to the surface again. Fear, anger, something deeper. Jungkook steps closer, his voice dropping. If something had happened to you in there. But it didn't, Jimin interrupts softly. That's not the point, Jungkook insists. Jimin exhales slowly, then what is the point? Jungkook hesitates. Because the truth, the real truth, feels too exposed. But then he looks at Jimin, standing there in the rain, completely soaked, completely real, and something inside him gives in. The point, Jungkook says quietly, is that I can't lose you too. Jimin's breath catches. The words settle between them, heavier than anything else that's been said tonight. And for a moment, everything else fades, I can't lose you too. The words don't disappear into the rain. They stay there, hanging between them, heavier than the storm, louder than the thunder rolling somewhere far behind the city skyline. Jimin doesn't answer right away. He just stares at Jungkook, eyes searching, heart racing for a completely different reason now. Two, he finally whispers. Jungkook's jaw tightens. For a moment, it looks like he might take it back, like he might retreat into silence the way he always does when things get too close, too real. But he doesn't. Instead, he exhales sharply and looks away, rain dripping from his lashes, his voice quieter when he speaks again. You think that tattoo is just ink? Jimin's chest tightens, then tell me what it is. Silence. Then Jungkook laughs softly, bitter and hollow. It's a grave. Jimin feels something inside him drop. What? Jungkook finally looks at him again, and there's something raw there now, something cracked open. Every line, every mark, it's someone I couldn't save. The world narrows. The rain feels colder. Jimin takes a step closer without realizing it. You never said. Because you never asked, Jungkook cuts in, but there's no anger in it, just exhaustion. And I wasn't exactly offering. Jimin swallows, then I'm asking now. Jungkook's gaze flickers, conflicted, like he's standing on the edge of something he's spent years avoiding. You don't want to know, he says quietly. I do. You think that, Jungkook replies, voice tightening, until you hear it. Try me. The challenge is soft, but it lands. Jungkook studies him for a long moment, as if weighing whether Jimin can actually carry what he's about to give him. You remember the name carved into the center? Jungkook asks. Jimin nods slowly, the one you always cover. Jungkook's lips press into a thin line. That was the first. Jimin's breath catches. She was, Jungkook pauses, searching for a word that doesn't exist anymore. Someone I thought I could protect. The way he says it. It's not just regret. It's guilt. What happened? Jimin asks, voice barely above the rain. Jungkook's hands curl into fists at his sides. I hesitated, he says. 1 second, that's all it took. Jimin feels the weight of that sentence sink into his bones. 1 second, Jungkook repeats like it's a curse, and it cost her everything. Jimin steps closer again, close enough now that he can see the way Jungkook's breathing has changed, uneven, sharp. That's not all on you, Jimin says gently. Jungkook's head snaps up. Don't, he says immediately. I mean it, Jimin insists. You can't carry every. Yes, I can, Jungkook cuts him off, voice suddenly fierce. Because I was there, because I promised. The intensity of it makes Jimin flinch slightly. Jungkook notices. His expression falters. For a second, regret flashes across his face, but it's quickly buried again under something harder. I made a deal, Jungkook continues, quieter now. After that, with them. Jimin's stomach twists, the people in the warehouse. Jungkook nods once. They clean up problems, make things disappear. And you became one of those problems, Jimin says slowly. Jungkook lets out a humorless laugh. No, I became their solution. The words hit like a punch. Jimin shakes his head slightly. That's not the same thing. It is when you're the one doing the damage, Jungkook replies. Silence falls again, but it's different now. Heavier. More dangerous. And the tattoo, Jimin asks after a moment. Jungkook looks down at his arm, rain tracing over the ink like it's trying to wash it away. It started as a reminder, he says, so I wouldn't forget, so I wouldn't hesitate again. Jimin's chest tightens, and now. Jungkook's lips part, but no words come out immediately. When he finally speaks, his voice is almost too quiet to hear. Now it's a warning. Jimin's heart skips. For who? Jungkook meets his eyes again. For anyone who gets too close. The meaning is clear. Painfully clear. Jimin exhales slowly, shaking his head. That's not fair. Jungkook frowns. What? You don't get to decide that people aren't strong enough to stay, Jimin says, his voice gaining strength. You don't get to push them away and call it protection. Jungkook's eyes darken. You think this is about what I want? I think you're scared, Jimin says. The word lands like a spark in gasoline. Jungkook takes a step forward, closing the distance between them again, his voice dropping dangerously low. You don't know what I'm scared of. Then tell me, Jimin challenges, not backing down. For a second it looks like Jungkook might explode. But instead, he stops, freezes. Because the answer is already there. Jungkook says quietly. Jimin's breath catches again. I'm scared of you, Jungkook repeats more clearly this time. The confession is raw, unfiltered, impossible to take back. Why? Jimin asks, his voice softer now. Jungkook's gaze doesn't waver. Because you don't see it, he says. You don't see what I am, what I've done. Jimin shakes his head. Then show me. Jungkook laughs under his breath, but there's no humor in it. You wouldn't look at me the same way. Try me. Again. That same quiet challenge. Jungkook's chest rises and falls, tension coiling tighter and tighter inside him. You want the truth? He asks. Yes. Jungkook nods slowly. Then he reaches for his sleeve. Jimin's eyes follow the movement, heart pounding harder with every second. Jungkook pulls the fabric back, exposing more of the tattoo, more of the lines Jimin hasn't seen before, more names carved into skin like they were never meant to fade. But then, Jungkook's fingers stop on a specific part. A mark Jimin hasn't noticed before. A date. Recent. Too recent. Jimin's breath catches. That one. Jungkook's voice is steady now. Too steady. That one, he says, is the last job they gave me. Jimin's stomach drops, and Jungkook looks at him. Right into him. I completed it. The rain suddenly feels freezing. Jimin's mind races, trying to piece it together, trying to understand what that means, what that implies. Who was it? He asks, his voice barely holding together. Jungkook doesn't answer immediately. And that silence. It feels different this time. Heavier. More dangerous than anything before. Jungkook, Jimin presses, his voice shaking now. Who was it? Jungkook exhales slowly. Then finally speaks. Someone you knew. Everything shatters. Jimin takes a step back like the ground itself has shifted under him. No, he says immediately. No, that's not. It is, Jungkook says quietly. Stop, Jimin snaps, shaking his head harder now. Just stop talking. But Jungkook doesn't. His name was. Don't, Jimin's voice breaks, louder than the storm, louder than everything. Don't say it. Jungkook falls silent. But the damage. It's already done. Jimin's chest heaves, his mind spinning, every possibility crashing into him at once. You're lying, he says, but it doesn't sound like he believes it. Jungkook doesn't argue. That's what makes it worse. You're lying, Jimin repeats, softer now, desperate. I wish I was, Jungkook admits. The world tilts. Everything Jimin thought he understood about Jungkook, about them, starts to fracture. You said you couldn't lose me, Jimin whispers, his voice trembling, but you're the one who destroys everything. Jungkook flinches. The words hit exactly where they're meant to. I didn't know, Jungkook says, and for the first time there's something close to panic in his voice. Not until it was too late. That doesn't change anything, Jimin replies. I know, Jungkook says. Silence falls again. But this time, it's not just heavy. It's broken. Jimin takes another step back, putting space between them, shaking his head like he's trying to wake up from something he can't escape. I trusted you, he says. Jungkook's chest tightens. I know. I defended you, Jimin continues. I stood there and, his voice cracks. I stood there and fought for you. Jungkook doesn't move. Doesn't speak. Because there's nothing he can say that fixes this. Jimin lets out a shaky breath, running a hand through his soaked hair, his thoughts spiraling. Who was it? He asks again, quieter now but more dangerous. Jungkook hesitates. Just for a second. But Jimin sees it. And that hesitation. It says everything. Tell me, Jimin demands. Jungkook closes his eyes briefly. Then opens them again. And this time, there's no holding back. It was Minkook. The name hits like a gunshot. Jimin freezes. Completely. Because Minkook wasn't just someone he knew. Minkook was family. The rain keeps falling. The world keeps moving. But Jimin doesn't. He just stands there, staring at Jungkook like he's seeing him for the first time. And maybe, for the first time, he really is. The rain doesn't stop. It falls harder, louder, like the sky itself is trying to drown what was just said. Jimin doesn't move at first. The name still echoes in his head, Minkook, looping, breaking, reshaping everything he thought he knew. His chest rises sharply, like breathing has become something unfamiliar, something difficult. You're lying, he whispers again, but this time the words feel hollow, fragile. Jungkook doesn't step closer. Doesn't reach for him. I wish I was, he says quietly. That's what breaks it. Not the confession, not the truth. But the way Jungkook says it, with no defense, no excuse, no attempt to soften the impact. Jimin lets out a shaky breath, his hand coming up to cover his mouth as if he can physically hold back the flood of emotions crashing into him. His shoulders tremble, not from the cold, but from the weight of everything collapsing at once. Minkook trusted you, Jimin says, his voice cracking. He talked about you like you were. He stops, swallowing hard. Like you mattered. Jungkook's jaw tightens, but he doesn't interrupt. He was trying to help people, Jimin continues, anger creeping into his voice now, mixing with grief. He wasn't a threat. He didn't deserve. I know, Jungkook says. The simplicity of it ignites something sharp inside Jimin. You don't get to say that, Jimin snaps, stepping forward now, eyes blazing despite the tears clinging to them. You don't get to stand there and say you know like it means anything. Jungkook absorbs the words without flinching. I didn't know it was him, he says again, more firmly this time. Not until I saw his face. Jimin laughs, a broken, disbelieving sound, and that was supposed to stop you. Jungkook's silence answers. Jimin's expression crumples just for a second. Say it, Jimin demands, his voice trembling again. Say what you did. Jungkook exhales slowly, like each word is being dragged out of him. I finished the job. The world goes quiet. Not literally, the rain is still there, the distant hum of the city still alive. But for Jimin, everything fades into nothing. You, he breathes, stepping back again. You killed him. Jungkook doesn't deny it. Jimin nods slowly, like he's forcing himself to accept it piece by piece, even as it tears him apart. Was he scared? Jimin asks suddenly. Jungkook's head lifts slightly, caught off guard. Jimin's gaze locks onto him, intense, desperate. Answer me. Jungkook hesitates. Then quietly, no. Jimin's brows furrow, confusion flickering through the grief. No. He knew, Jungkook says, before I said anything, he stops, his throat tightening. He looked at me like he understood. Jimin's breathing stutters. He said your name, Jungkook continues, his voice barely holding together now. Right before. Jimin feels his knees weaken, but he forces himself to stay standing. What did he say? He asks, almost afraid to hear it. Jungkook closes his eyes for a brief moment, as if bracing himself. He said, take care of Jimin. The words shatter whatever was left. Jimin's legs give out and he stumbles back, barely catching himself against the cold, wet pavement. A sob escapes him, raw and unfiltered. Breaking through everything he tried to hold together. He wouldn't, Jimin chokes, shaking his head. He wouldn't say that to you. But he did, Jungkook says, his voice quieter now, filled with something dangerously close to regret. He trusted me, even then. Jimin presses his hands against his face, trying to block it out, trying to silence the memory that's now been rewritten in the cruelest way. You don't deserve that, Jimin whispers. You don't deserve to carry his last words. I know, Jungkook replies. Silence stretches between them again, but it's no longer tense. It's exhausted. Worn down by truth. Jimin lowers his hands slowly, his face pale, his eyes red and glassy. So what now? He asks. Jungkook doesn't answer immediately. Because for the first time, he doesn't have one. I have one chance, Jungkook finally says, his voice steadying slightly. That's the deal. Jimin lets out a hollow laugh, a deal with people who turn lives into numbers. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Jimin says, shaking his head. Not anymore. The certainty in Jungkook's voice makes something inside Jimin go still. You're really going to go back, Jimin says, realization settling in. After all of this. Jungkook looks at him. I don't get to walk away clean, he says, not after what I've done. Jimin takes a step closer again, despite everything, his voice softer now, more fragile. And what about me? The question hangs there. Simple. Devastating. Jungkook's gaze falters for the first time. That's why you need to stay out of it, he says quietly. Jimin's expression tightens. You don't get to decide that for me. I'm not asking, Jungkook replies, I'm telling you. Jimin shakes his head immediately. No. Jimin. No, Jimin repeats more firmly this time. You don't get to push me away because it's easier for you. It's not about easy, Jungkook says, his voice rising slightly. It's about keeping you alive. I'm already living with this, Jimin shoots back. You think walking away makes that better? Jungkook doesn't have an answer. Because it doesn't. Jimin exhales slowly, his anger fading into something quieter, something heavier. I hate you, Jimin says. The words land softly. But they cut deeper than anything else. Jungkook nods once. I know. But I can't, Jimin's voice breaks again and he looks away, struggling to find the words. I can't pretend you don't matter. Jungkook's chest tightens. Mean you asked you to take care of me, Jimin continues, his voice trembling. Do you really think this is what he meant? Jungkook swallows hard. No, he admits. Then stop deciding everything on your own, Jimin says. Stop acting like you're the only one who has to carry this. The rain begins to ease, softening into something quieter, almost gentle. Jungkook looks at him for a long moment. Then slowly he nods. Okay, he says. Jimin blinks, surprised. Okay. Jungkook exhales, something in his posture shifting, loosening just slightly. One chance, he repeats. That's all I have. Jimin watches him carefully. And I'm not wasting it running away from everything, Jungkook continues. Or from you. Something fragile, uncertain, but real flickers between them. Jimin takes a small step forward. This time Jungkook doesn't stop him. I'm not forgiving you, Jimin says quietly. I'm not asking you to. I don't know if I ever can. Jungkook nods, I know. A pause. Then Jimin reaches out, hesitating for just a second before his fingers brush against Jungkook's hand. It's not forgiveness. It's not even trust. But it's something. And for now, it's enough. The storm begins to fade behind them, the city slowly coming back to life, unaware of the war that just unfolded in the rain. Jungkook looks down at their hands, then back at Jimin. I'll fix this, he says, not like a promise but like a decision. Jimin doesn't respond right away. He just nods once, his grip tightening slightly. Not because he believes it, but because, despite everything, he wants to.